Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. I know I speak for all of you when I say the following words, which carry more weight than they ever have in the last century. Happy to connect. Don't you agree, Dr. Sinha, Mr. Ramesh?
Oh,
Absolutely.
yes. This is the new normal.
Yes, yes. So let's begin our webinar titled How India's Manufacturing and Supply Chains Are Dealing with COVID-19. See, the idea is to initiate a conversation about India's manufacturing and supply chain sectors. This dialogue is greatly needed in such unprecedented times, and the views of the industry stalwarts that we have with us will really help professionals and decision makers in the industries navigate these times. So, let me quickly introduce the panelists. We have Mr. P.K. Ramesh, director of the uh, who's the director, whole-time director and CEO of Micromatic Machine Tools Private Limited, which is an arm of Ace Micromatic Group. Uh, he began his career in BFW and has over 30 years of experience in machine tool marketing in the domestic and international markets. Uh, with an installed base of more than 55,000 machines across the world, Ace Micromatic Group is one of the largest and most comprehensive machine tools group in the world. We have Dr. Rakesh Sinha, who's an alumnus of IIT BHU, NIT IE, IIT Bombay, and Harvard Business School. His passion is supply chain management, and he has the first doctorate in this field in India. He has decades of rich experience with Godrej Consumer Products, a leading FMCG company, and has held leadership positions in the areas of manufacturing, projects, strategy, information technology, marketing, and of course, supply chain management, with responsibilities across India, US, Indonesia, Africa, and Argentina. Now, the first 30 minutes of this session, uh, I'll ask questions to the two esteemed panelists. And then the last half of this session will take up questions from the attendees. But meanwhile, also, dear attendees, those who have registered, please put in your questions. And if there is a question that resonates with the topic that is being discussed, I'll be happy to put it up. I may also ask you to ask your question yourself by unmuting the icon that shows against your name in the app. So let's begin with the first question. And this question is to the two gentlemen about the premise itself. So how has COVID-19 impacted the respective manufacturing and supply chain sectors in terms of the functioning of plants, movement of supplies, and most of all, the market and the industry sentiments? So let's start with you, Mr. Ramesh, first.
Good morning. Thank you, Anand. And I hope this would add some value and people could take home something from here. Quickly jumping into your question,
Yes.
how has it affected? Like you mentioned, we are in the capital business and we manufacture machines that are used to manufacture parts that go to sub-assemblies and then on to products. It could be cars, motorcycles, scooters, aeroplanes, earth moving equipment. So we are a base B2B kind of an industry.
Okay.
And again, the SME sector, which is one of those sectors that has been pretty badly hit. See, again, there are going to be the organized sector where relatively, again, I'm very carefully using the word relative. They have better resources, maybe better management, better bandwidth, etc. But the MSME, which perhaps forms the largest base and which perhaps employs the largest number of people, where perhaps the bandwidths are absolutely optimized. This sector is the sector that buys a lot of capital equipment, makes a lot of parts, makes sub-assemblies. There's a lot of value add, there's a lot of job generation that happens here. And in this sector, perhaps There are big companies, small companies. There are companies that export. The suddenness with which this has happened, the closing down, or let's say almost or coming to a standstill of the industry in India, and also those people who are exporting, the industry at large globally, is something that at least in 40 years of my career, I have never seen. So there's a great amount of, what shall I say, disbelief, shock, and perhaps even psychologically and mentally is the first hit that has come to the grips of the entire manufacturing sector. So I would perhaps look at this as a one of a kind situation that I don't believe any of us have experienced before. So the question of, how do you react to something that you don't know? It's like the foragers of the good old days who need to find ways.
Yes, yes.
So it's a path that has to be discovered. This is what I would is my impression of what's happening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ramesh. A sense of humor really, really helps, and it's very, very much needed in today's unprecedented times to deal with the situation. Dr. Sinha, your views, please.
Yeah, I can speak on behalf of FMCG, which is a B2C industry. And first of all, let's admit there's a real black swan event which nobody could predict. And if such events happen in future, we can't predict them either. So all we can do is our response to the challenges that we are facing every day. Now, in this case, the disruption is both on the supply side as well as on the demand side. On the demand side, consumers who are really locked down in their homes, they do go out from time to time and buy certain groceries, FMCG products, but they are minimizing the store visits, and rightly so. They should minimize the store visits. And one of the implications of minimizing the store visits is that every time they go to the store, they would buy much larger quantity. So we have seen upstocking at consumer homes, and suddenly the demand for many products, including sanitizers, hand wash products, soaps, etc., has gone through the roof. On the supply side, initially, during the first week of lockdown, there was a lot of confusion, which has got sorted out over a period of time. Whether we can run factories, do we need permission? How long does it take to get permission? Can the workers come to the factory? Do they need passes? And how long does it take to get those passes? And not only our factories, but our vendors' factories also need to run. The packaging material suppliers, the raw material suppliers also need to run their factories, and their workers need to come to the factory. So initially 1 week, the first 1 week was pretty turbulent, but after that things started getting sorted. And in
Okay.
the logistics area, there was a complete ban on interstate movement of trucks. The trucks were standing wherever they were on the highways, which again got sorted out after some time. But now things are becoming more normal compared to how it was about at the beginning of the lockdown. So in such a scenario where there is a supply disruption, there is a demand disruption, in my opinion, there are three, four things that companies can do. The one is the ability to sense demand. Now, the companies which have relatively good demand sensing mechanisms in place, they are able to sense what type of demand is coming from the retail outlets, and then accordingly at the distributor level, and they are able to respond. But companies who don't have this demand sensing mechanism in place are really struggling in the dark. The second thing is, after you sense the demand, you need to respond to it much faster, which requires, on one side, the flexibility in the entire system, flexibility in sourcing, flexibility in manufacturing, ability to rejig the lines from one product to several products, and also flexibility in distribution. We have seen direct to retail distribution picking up during this area. And along with this flexibility, we need very fast response time. If the demand for product A has gone up, we should produce more of product A and distribute it. So the entire gamut of supply chain operations revolves around sensing the demand correctly and more frequently, then having flexibility in the entire system, and also improving the response time at all levels. So
Very
this is,
insightful, Dr. Sinha. Mr. Ramesh, you have any views in this on the demand part or sensing the demand?
Yeah,
Uh, yes.
yeah, definitely sensing the demand is the key. Sensing the demand from an essential and from a day-to-day B2C kind of a perspective is one. And the little more difficult part, or let's say the lag part of it, is sensing the demand from, let's say, B2B. For example, we are in the capital business, and the demand for parts are going to come from, expected, anticipated sales of, let's say, motorcycles or cars or, white goods, those industries. And typically there what happens is the agility and also the time for, let's say, the supply chain and for the part manufacturer, sub-assembly manufacturer, or the original equipment manufacturer, they work with certain stocks, certain levels of stocks, because again, inventory becomes an important issue, cash flows, work in progress, and there's an extremely important commercial commerce angle to it. So while certain minimum order quantity stocks, and again, like the supermarket concept of, based on what the demand is, uh, perhaps though not as sophisticated as, let's say, the consumer durable and non-durable goods are, they are in place, but sentiment of buying is an extremely important aspect that really needs to come into the picture. Now,
Okay.
hand sanitizers and soaps, whether you can afford, you can't afford, is the need of the hour, and that's what you're going to buy. But will you buy a scooter? Will you buy a car? Or
True.
will you go in an Uber? Or will you take public transportation? Now, this we believe, perhaps at this point in time, it's nothing is really known. Everybody is working on, some theoretical models and looking at, minimum, maximum, and things like that. Perhaps I don't believe that we'll get a sense of what exactly is going to happen, at least for another 8, 10, 12 weeks. Maybe June, July is when we kind of get a little better feel. But some surveys are being done. We are talking to customers. Our customers are talking to their customers. So the sense of feel that's kind of coming in is, yes, because of this, there could be issues of, preference for personal transportation. Now, if there's a preference for personal transportation, how many already have, how many are the new ones who will go and buy in? So on the B2B sector, yes, some kind of a balance is going to come. But what is that balance going to be? Is it 20% of what it was, 50% of what it was, 110% of what it was? Being optimistic, the expectation is in the short term, maybe the markets are going to come back only about 40, 50%. And
Okay.
I say this because I'm not looking at it only from an Indian market perspective. I'm also looking at it from, let's say, what's happening in Europe. We have establishment in China. We have some manufacturing in China, and we have a distribution in China. So we're trying to relate to what's happened, because they're slightly ahead of the curve. They've perhaps been, kind of getting back to normal now with Wuhan opening up on the 8th of April. Some machines have gone, some manufacture is happening. And the most important aspect is about what's going to happen for international finished good trade. While it's still too premature to look at people movement and the difficulties or the regulations or the new norm that has to come in for people movement, even for goods movements, what's going to happen, and then what kind of a stimulus that the economy is going to get. There's a lot of, this is all kind of work in progress. So by June, perhaps we will get a little better perspective. In the B2B circle, the known methodology for something like this, or something that they're trying to apply, is, the 4 hours or the 5 hours. So which is about, resolving the issue, reimagining the issue, restoring to some normalcy, and then, to reestablish. That's the methodology that's being looked at this point in time. So we are still at the resolve stage, which means cash, inventory, cost, people. that's being worked out both at the bigger OEs and at the MSME and people who are part of the supply chain, because they're also trying to look at, where are my labor force? How many are going to come back? Those are the kind of issues. They're first trying to look at where are we standing at this point in time.
That's really, really informative and a great reality check. And that reminds me of, and you spoke about from global supply chain perspective as well. And that reminds me of an article that Harvard Business Review came up with, in the early part of the pandemic, that the China-linked supply chain globally will be the hardest hit. But there may be some um, opportunity in the sense, or not an opportunity, but there was some preparedness because it came in around the time of the Lunar New Year, when usually the inventory managers keep things in stock, anticipating a fall in inventory levels during the Lunar New Year. So that could have saved them for a bit, but since this has been prolonged, now supply chains, are really starting to show the impact. But that was the question that I want to ask you, gentlemen, is that what are the hardest hit sectors in India? And from a media perspective, these are three, namely the auto sector and the high tech manufacturing, which is the smartphones and equipment, electronic equipment, and the pharma sector. So, what is your view and experience of the hardest hit industrial sectors in India? Let's start with Dr. Sinha.
Yeah. So amongst the manufactured goods, I think all consumer durables have been hit. That's my reading. Even if you take things like the white goods, even they have been hit because firstly, the demand has almost collapsed for them. The distribution of those products is not happening either, and the manufacturing has also stopped. And just think of the summer coming in, and if the demand for ACs and such products drops and refrigerators drops, you can imagine what would happen to the sector. They will take quite some time to come up.
Yes.
And same thing with the automotive sector, because all the consumer durables part have been hit. In terms of consumer non-durables, some of the cosmetics products have been hit, but the daily essentials, I think their demand has actually gone up. That's the overall.
Correct.
And services sector obviously has been hit, the tourism, hotel, etc.
Okay, okay. Mr. Ramesh?
Yeah, I think Dr. Sinha kind of summed it up very well. The only aspect that I would kind of add to that is, see, there's a lot of consumption of goods that happen because the service sector is robust. Now, while the actual demand for that sector has gone because of the worry and psychologically has gone down, the expectation that let's take for example hotels, let's take for example aeroplane tickets or the trains. Now it's expected that unless and until absolutely essential, none of these sectors are going to come back to what it was, at least for another 6 months. I mean, this is again hopeful.
Oh.
Now if that sector doesn't come up, then even in the essentials, whether it's the IRCTC catering, whether it's the kitchens for the for the planes, whether it's food and people traveling, and because people are traveling, whatever it is, whether it's that new cycle or whether it's that new skate or whether it's that new headphone, so service sector collapsing and people not consuming services compounds the slack in demand. Just
Correct.
imagine, we are now coming close to the situation of some kind of a lockdown being different. Again, the talk in a couple of meetings that I was there yesterday, day before yesterday, is that they're trying to open up some parts and they're trying to make some other parts a little more strict. That green zone, red zone, amber zone that they're trying to look at.
Correct, correct.
So let's say whatever it is, whether it's 30th April, whether it's 15th April, whether it's 1st May, 6th May, I don't believe that the next day, unlike in the past, people are going to go back to with full vigor, whether it is to work or whether it is to a market, or whether it is to a movie theater, or whether it is to a hotel, so again, this gets connected to consumption of petrol, that gets connected to oil price. And one thing that's very different this time is, of course, we've had some supply chain disruptions in the past, like the volcanic eruptions, geography,
Yes,
but then they were at one geographic location or two geographic locations. Now,
correct.
since this is everywhere, see, for example, I was talking to people in China, my office in China, and they were saying that factories have begun functioning, but the international cargo sector is not yet opened up. So now people are saying, what do I come and produce for?
Correct.
That's the only thing that I had to add. It's kind of across the board, encompassing everything. Some are more bad than the others.
That's really informative. Really, see, to give you an instance of how we saw it panning out. Now, Meshmix Media was at Delhi Auto Expo in mid-Feb, and people had started to get a sense of this thing coming in, and some visitors who were coming from abroad were not allowed in. So people have started to anticipate this in not so big a scale, but India's industries, particularly the auto sector, had started to prepare for something like this, considering it is really exposed to the global China-linked supply chain from the input side. So I want to ask you, Mr. Ramesh, is that the auto sector is doubly hit in the sense of trying to keep pace with the regulations, so BS4 to BS6, and the fall in not even doubly hit from at least three sides. So the compliance bit and the fall in or the slowing down of demand of the last year and a half, and now this. So what is your experience of the auto sector in particular?
Yeah, yes, the year, see, the major disruption because of the virus and COVID was perhaps, February, March, and more so in March. But even before January, like you rightly said, for example, one of the biggest shows, which is a barometer of the automotive industry, was the auto show, Auto Expo in Delhi. Now, China was already hit, and I mean, the who's who were not even participating at the Auto Expo. So, auto on an average was already down by say 20%, 22%. And BS4, BS6, yes. But while the sector has been affected, and now with this and with the China and other parts being affected, and with international global chain being affected, it's going to get worse. But I believe that this would also will urge governments. See, while regulation and doing things better was one way of looking at it, second, there was a lot that needed to be done. Even today, if you look at India, if you look at the vehicle density compared as a measure of the number of people from a population perspective, is still far lower than what it can be or what it is there in the developed
Correct.
countries.
Correct. Correct.
So again, one, is it down? Yes, it's definitely down. Now that this has happened, and then the economy has to be brought back. So perhaps this would, lead government spending in creation of infrastructure in the interiors of the country.
Okay. Okay.
See, because there are a lot of people. There's people who've gone back to villages. So Manrega, so many such things that, you have to look at creating work and putting people to use. So this is an opportune time to create infrastructure. And by infrastructure, I believe that they would be looking at, roads and such development. And the minute that roads development, such things start happening, obviously then the automotive, because transportation wheel is perhaps one of the most important things that has come. Yes.
Okay.
What kind of wheel? Will it be electric? Will it be BS4? How clean? I mean, those issues will still continue to be there. But in short, to look at your question, it was bad for the automotive industry. it's going to get a little worse for the automotive industry in the short term. And when I say short term, I mean 12, 16, 18, 20 months. But I believe should come together and, it should kind of pick up. But again, then is it going to be 20 million? Is it going to be 25 million? Now, those are questions that we'll perhaps be able to get a better idea as we come closer. So there is an opportunity. So, and it's not that it's just gloom and doom.
Great. That brings me to a point, and I was wondering if I should ask this question to you gentlemen. Can you tell me what has been your impression? What was your impression when it began, your personal impression, and your personal expectation of how long this could pan out, and that of your peers and colleagues in the industry? How are they dealing with the whole situation? And what do they expect as to how the clouds will clear? Can we begin with you, Dr. Sinha?
Yeah.
The prevailing sentiment?
Yeah, initially when it started, the sentiment wasn't so bad. But over a period of time, once everyone understood the gravity of the situation, they
When
came
was
to
this? At what point did you actually saw the real magnitude of the storm coming in?
somewhere around the second week of March.
Okay.
People started getting much more serious, and
Okay.
roughly about 10 days before the lockdown, when people started getting serious. And even when the lockdown was started, there was a feeling that this could be extended, or even if it is relaxed, it could come back again for a couple of weeks or 3 weeks. So the gravity of the situation wasn't fully understood initially. And as we got into it, people became more panicky. But now I think people are coming out of panic and they are taking more considered decisions, more informed decisions, and the right decisions now as to how
Okay.
to go about it in future. So I see less of panic. I see a lot of work being done by people, but all the work in the right direction that is happening. So I'm happy about that.
Okay. What role, and I'll ask this question to Mr. Ramesh also, to what degree do you attribute the sense of panic to the infodemic also that is being seen? I think that is also unprecedented within the last 3 years, the WhatsApp groups and all this. Uh, so what is the role of the information overload that we have nowadays into playing into the whole panic situation, if there is any? The information overload that we keep getting from all sides, and fake news and this and that, particularly on the economy and the industry, is what I am trying to understand. Because we get a lot of messages that please do not post from friends and colleagues, that only post source information. And we being in the media in our groups, we instantly recognize or tell fake news from real news. So we are still much saved, from this flood of information. But generally, people are getting these forwards and messages from all sides that this has fallen ill, that has become sealed and containment, and people are making beelines at supermarkets and these stores and these images. So, what role is that playing in hampering or damaging the sentiment as far as the economy and the industry is concerned? Do you see that playing any role? I mean, at this point,
I
Dr.
presume
Sinha,
you're asking Dr.
Mr.
Sinha.
Ramesh, please. Yes, Mr. Ramesh.
Oh, to me, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Just very briefly
Does
before
it
I
play
take
any
this.
role? The reason I asked was that what is the percentage or what is the degree of the role of information overload, the hyper connectivity that we have today? Because there could be, if not as difficult, but difficult times in the past also, let's say in the last 50, 60 years. But the overall situation, whether it is good or bad for the overall economy, is what I'm trying to understand from you.
Yeah. From an information, see, again, we are trying to look at the pandemic and superimposing it with the information. And because we have an effect already in our hands, and we are only trying to look at whether it's contributing good, bad, or whatever. But this information overkill, again, I'm talking from a business and from an economic standpoint of view, has been there at least the last couple of years. Point number one. Point number two, this is where I believe that, see, always we had more information than what we could handle. The only difference was it was in books and on shelves and in files and in papers. It couldn't jump out at us. Now,
That's true.
the issue is, we had to go get it and look for it and do something about it. And that kind of a little bit changed when computer screen and browsing happened. Today, all of us are wedded to our cell phones, and I believe it's more to do with the psychological behavior of people rather than the information itself. You
Okay.
knew a lot of things. Today, now, because you know something, you want to do something about it, and then whether you want it and it's so easy and it doesn't cost, so you send it to 200 people, whether it matters or it doesn't matter. So I would like to, more than the information, I would like to look at it as a behavioral trait of people, whether it's about their own sense of, I don't know, contribution, importance. Please, I'm not making a right, wrong, good, bad judgment at all here. It's more to do with human behavior rather
That's true.
than the information by itself. This is
That's
one
true.
observation. But then coming back to your question, from a long-term perspective, I believe information should be based on data. Now, what is good data, what is not good data is something that, there must be some discerning methodology of looking at it. And to do it in a discerning manner, it means your ability to, look at holistically a situation and then see what it needs to do. At this point in time, yes, it's giving an opportunity for more people to participate in this whole situation of information. And because there is participation of a larger number of people, there is larger amount of confusion. I don't know if this is a right comparison. Now, if you ask anybody anywhere in the world, what is the best form of government, I believe everybody would say democracy. Now, if they say where the maximum gets achieved, then they'll say Ram Raj. But Ram Raj is not democracy. So democracy is chaotic, information is chaotic. There will be chaos. Now we'll have to learn to live with this. And then
So
I believe exactly like what Dr. Sinha said, at the initial stage, there will be confusion, there will be panic, then you'll get used to the panic. So we have to go through this.
that's so true.
So
So true.
now, should there be control? There should be some kind of control. I'm not saying, but then ultimately, we should allow for this to find its own level, and it will happen.
Wow. Wow. That's really helpful and insightful. That Ram Rajya is not democratic, and there's so much there, wisdom between the lines. Dr. Sinha, any views on the infodemic and its impact on the economy? And I want to come to another question. If you want to weave that answer into your answer, is its impact on people, uh, who are at the forefront, who
Yeah.
are facing this, especially the human resources, the entry level. We all have 20 plus years of experience, so we have some buffer or things in place to be able to save us from drastic scenarios. But people who are beginning their careers, there's a lot of anxiety in terms of what will happen to the company, to the job, the salary, the economic situation. So could you address that in your answer as well, the thing that you're seeing?
Yeah. So firstly, there's definitely information overload, and we can't wish it away. There would be an overload. But if you ask me, all the information that we need for running our business, the good information we can get from the government sites and from reliable sources, industry sources. So all this extra information, it comes, it's really up to us, up to each one of us to really separate it and not take any action. There are some good things which appear from time to time in this information from unknown sources. So, but it depends on the individuals. Ultimately, they have to decide, they have to be discerning enough to pick up what is good for them and not waste too much of time reading each and every mail that comes or each and every WhatsApp post. You have to just look at it and then discard it. So really, how much time do we spend on that is the key. For the new generation, next generation, yes, it's an anxious time for them. but they are also quite mature. I don't see them as immature people. They are mature people. They know that they are entering the industry at a very turbulent time, and there are certain ways of navigating it during turbulent times. And I'm sure they would do it. They would take the right call. I don't see them getting panicky, excepting a few cases where the internships got cancelled at the last moment and they are without summer internship. So some of those cases are really worrying. But in most other cases, yes, it's a difficult time, but they would find their way out. They are quite smart and quite knowledgeable and
So
intelligent people.
from
So
your experience, and I
experience
want
doesn't
to
really.
ask, so from your experience, I want to pose this question to Mr. Ramesh after this. What is your advice to entry-level professionals and those who are starting their career as to how to hold up, how to deal, and come out best from this situation whenever hopefully this ends? What are the things, basic things that they need to do or think about?
You want me to answer or Dr.
Yes, yes,
Sinha?
Mr. Ramesh.
Yeah, oh, sorry. See, one fundamental point that I strongly believe in from my readings and from what I've seen, our generation, I'm 60 plus now, so, our, our kind of people, look, life was largely, I'm not saying that learning stops, was largely about a certain phase. I don't want to bring in time and age. I don't know, whatever, 28, 30, 26, 32, whatever, Life was largely divided into two time zones. There was a time zone when you learned. That time zone was you learned formally. You went to school. You learned some things, and then you were given formal education, and then for whatever it's worth, you were given. It could be science, it could be art, it could be engineering, it could be medicine. And then you spent a certain period soon after that basic formal learning where you did, where you kind of reconnected with what was formally given to you. You learned some things, you picked up some skills of doing it yourself. Then some things you de-learned. What you were told was, yes, that's theoretical, but practically this is how it is different, blah blah blah, that. And there was a second phase where, based on what you learned, I'm not saying that the learning stopped. For those people whose learning stopped, then their experience was 1 year multiplied by the number of years that they worked or they were entrepreneurs or whatever. Okay. So it was a phase of a time of learning, a time of acquiring skills, and a time of using what you have learned and what those skills, adapting it to the situation, learning hacks, learning tricks, learning how to suit it, and your life as a professional, whatever, 60 years or whatever, got over. Today, for the people who are beginning their careers, entire professions are going to be disrupted. So this business of learning, people who are beginning their careers today, my children, my son, many of our children, people who are listening to this. Now, if they don't reinvent themselves, now what is that time? 3 year, 5 year, 2 year, all of that depends on their specific fields. Now, this is what we've been seeing even in the IT sector. You have languages, the languages change overnight. And now, not just the IT sector, not just for coding, even when it comes to anything that a managerial kind of a thing does, if it's based on logic, with the developments that are happening in AI, anything that needs logic, anything that needs data, anything that needs application of data and logics, slowly but surely, over a period of time, it may not happen today, but in 5 years from now, 8 years from now, 10 years, I'm talking of a horizon of the next 30, 40 years, there are going to be major disruptions from a human perspective in skill. And I'm not just like, see, look, you needed a chartered accountant to help you with your taxes. But with the right AI and with the right formulation of rules, now an algorithm can tell you what is the best way to do if this is what you have done. Though maybe, so I'm talking of even an educated person of that particular level. Now, this is not going to be just in even art, even painting, several of these things are going to be disrupted. So For the people who are beginning their careers or the people who are getting in, the idea is be flexible. They really need to keep reinventing themselves at least once every 3 to 5 years, again, depending on what their vocation is going to be. And this is where AI can look at algorithms, but there are many, many areas where the algorithms need to be interpreted. There may be, a different kind of an analytics that need to be done. There may be looking out for, so everybody has to become more and more entrepreneurial and skills for surviving professionally. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say. See,
Absolutely.
2000 years back, what a person needed to survive was he did not know where his food was going to come the next day. So he had
Yeah,
hunting
we
skills.
were all hunters and gatherers and
Yes.
foragers.
So again,
Some people say that those were the good times.
yeah,
But
good, bad is relative. So again, we have to get back into that kind of a state saying that we
yes,
don't know where our tomorrows is going to come from. So that's
yes,
where we need to be aware and be
yes,
prepared to reinvent ourselves. This is what
yes,
I
yes.
think. Again, I'm talking of a time frame of the next 10, 12, 15 years.
That's so true. That's so true, Mr. Ramesh. I completely, wholeheartedly agree on the point that we need to. My takeaway from one of the takeaways is that we need to, tap into our evolutionary instinct that we've had for thousands and millions of years of being able to, deal and survive with large, disastrous events that we've already always had in the timeline of history. And now, as you so rightly said, that the next 12, 15 years are going to be full of ups and downs because of a disruption in supply chain, disruption in the way new careers are being formed. And that's so insightful. And Dr. Sinha, much
Yeah.
like Mr. Ramesh, I've known you to be very cool and composed even during the most challenging of times. Uh, so, your advice to the young generation, how to deal with the present times and the times coming in?
Yeah, so as Mr. Ramesh said, the flexibility is very important, and the willingness to learn things as they go along. One more thing I would like to add is many of the youngsters, they take to their own ventures as a startup once they come out of their colleges. I believe this is a much better time for a startup, because in all this turbulence, when the future is so much uncertain, the business models need to be reinvented, the delivery models need to be reinvented, and the youngsters can do it much better than the experienced people. They can find out what really works, what doesn't work, and they can come out with their own startups. So this is the right time to do the startup. Like if you see the number of startups which happened globally in the year 2008, 2009, after the financial crisis, most of the big billion and trillion level companies started in 2008 or 2009, some of the biggest ones now. So likewise, there's going to be a spate of new startups, and youngsters who want to take a plunge into that, I would advise them to take the plunge and work out something which is going to be much better suited to navigate such turbulent situations than the known business models. So,
Brilliant, brilliant. Both of the answers, they are so wise and helpful. I'm really grateful to you, gentlemen. Now the questions have started coming in. I'll now pick up questions. Hopefully, we'll get to speak to the attendee also who's asking these questions. Let me pick up a question from Mr. Tarun Goyal. Um, I think he's from Stellar Supply Chain, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see if I can. Okay. Let me see if we can unmute. Okay. Hello, Mr. Goyal. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can definitely hear. Great.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. You're from Stellar Supply Chain, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yes. I'm from Stellar Value Chain.
Value chain.
Yeah, yeah. And I've already put forward my question. Either or both of the eminent panelists can answer it. I would see, we are facing it in India day in day out, and we are devising our own crisis management mechanisms and all. But how the industry is reacting globally to it, there are countries who have suffered far worse than us. What are the have the large organizations done over there? Can we have some learnings from there, so that we can be ready for the worst also, if at all it comes?
Mr. Ramesh, can you start from?
Yeah, learnings about how the other countries are coping with this crisis.
Yes, from the business point of view.
For example, I have some, not too much, interactions with my China office and several of our Chinese customers, dealers, and the China industry. See, again, much of what applies in China need not and may not work and could be applied here. But again, if you kind of break it down into very fundamental things, is they gave a lot of focus to the here and now. When again, when I say the here and now was, looking at their feet, which meant, what is today status of my stocks? What can I get in? What is it that's required, which I can get out? And the focus was on simple, doable, day-to-day things. That was the first thing that they did. So it was more about containment, taking care of people, and doing what they could do without taking any undue risks. Again, from a futuristic perspective, the idea was not to contribute to make the problem worse. The second step that they did was, they kind of said, okay, if this is what it needs to be done, and if flattening the curve is what they need to be done, then let's not do, and let's go by what the experts are telling us. And they waited for that to be done. While they were waiting, I believe they were trying to look at how they were normally doing business internally, and whether those practices would be needed to be continued, whether they were relevant, they were not relevant, and if and when they go back, what is it that they need to do, so that both from a cost perspective and from an effect perspective, they could get cut. Now, this is what, in the short time, they've just gone back. So they are now trying to look at what they have worked together, how do they apply it? So this is how China has kind of looked at doing. And again, there's nothing, it's a very basic and a simple way of, looking at the here and now. Don't jeopardize the future. See what all you could do once you get back, and then apply it in a workable fashion once you get back.
Yeah,
Dr.
thanks.
Sinha?
I mean, yeah.
Sorry, Tarun. Dr. Sinha, would you like to address this question as well?
Yeah. I think from the business, managing the business point of view, I don't think there are any major learnings as of now, because not enough time has elapsed in most of the countries where we could take business learnings on how to manage the crisis. Of course, there are learnings on how to manage the pandemic, and those learnings are at government level, administrative level, etc. But in terms of business, one thing which is coming out is the companies which didn't have enough flexibility in their operations, they are suffering more, and the companies which had inherent flexibility and which were more demand driven than forecast driven, those companies have survived the turbulence much better. So, but these are generic learnings that go for more demand-driven supply chain, create more flexibility, and improve the speed of response. These are nothing new as learnings. Apart from these, we don't see many other learnings as of now. Maybe not enough time has elapsed for us to capture these learnings and see the impact of different types of actions that the companies are taking the world over. It's too early.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Tarun, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks a lot. It answers to quite an extent, but this is a topic which will go on for quite some time. So probably
Yes.
at the moment this will be sufficient. Yeah.
And
Thank you for letting me know. And
as we go along.
And you take care, stay safe.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Take care. So another question that we can take from would be from Mr. Prasad. Let me see if we can speak with him. Mr. Prasad, you there? Hello, Mr. Prasad. Can you hear us? Okay, I think maybe busy. No. Okay, I think there's some technical. Oh, okay, answer live. All right. I'm just writing a message to him because I'm not able to unmute him for some reason. Okay, maybe he's not there. So let's take another question. There is one from Mr. Hariri who's saying, now all airlines are changing their passenger planes to cargo planes. Will this help resolve difficulties in the cargo sector? Do you have any take on that, Dr. Sinha?
I think the cargo capacity that exists, that's enough to take care of the current level of load. In future, if the cargo load goes up, then we may need some urgent capacity where these passenger airlines capacity can be used. But as of now, many of the cargo planes themselves are not being fully utilized. So this would be more in future and on need basis. But I don't personally see this coming in very handy at this point in time, other than possibly for transporting some of the key medicines and some of the key PPEs, for example.
Great, thank you. We have a question for Mr. Ramesh regarding the machine tool sector from Mr. Ramachandran Vaidyanathan. Let me see if I can unmute so he can ask the question himself. Hello, Mr. Ramachandran, can you hear us?
Hello. Yes, sir.
How are you?
I am very fine, sir. How are you? Thanks so much for this nice.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question to Mr. Ramesh.
Yes.
Yes, Mr.
So
Ramchandran,
what
go
could
ahead.
be this COVID effect for the MSME for the machine tool companies, and being a small and medium industries, how to manage their resource and the funds and the manpower? This is the question which I want to ask Mr. Ramesh.
Mr. Ramchandran, I presume you are looking at it from a manufacturing perspective. You are a manufacturer making machines. Is my understanding correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Exactly, sir. From Arrow Machine Tools, sir.
Yeah. It's a tough situation. See, two things. By nature of the machine tool industry, we are not mass producing people, so we are dependent on people. So the first and foremost thing that we really will have to look at is how best we can partner and make our people a part of this situation. Because, we are dependent, whether it's the experience of assembly, whether it's the experience of design, and whether it's the experience of servicing. A lot of it is structured, a lot of it is art. So the first and foremost issue is people. And when it comes to people, I think it's important that once there's a fair, free association of them into this, making them part of your core team, whether it is about cuts that may be necessary financially or otherwise, whether it is about practices to take out waste. So this is perhaps the first and the foremost important thing that needs to be done. The second most important thing that I would look at is, since capacity itself, capacity utilization for our customers is going to be a big question. I don't believe that there will be, at least in the immediate future, when I say immediate future, I'm talking of 3, 4, 5, 6 months, new needs, maybe, selling machines may be a little difficult because I don't believe anybody will be looking at adding capacity. But everybody would be very, very keen in getting their respective companies back into operations. I'm talking about our customers now. So when they are trying to start up their machines that you have supplied to them or some other machines, there will definitely be need for services. Now, this is where we have the expertise, our people have the expertise. So instead of building machines, can we help our customers to start up quicker, easier, faster, help them to retool? Dr. Sinha was talking about, flexibility. See, instead of making components for some particular model of motorcycle, if they want to make for another tractor or something like that, which may mean some change, some modification in the machine, as machine manufacturers, how can we help support them? See, because unless and until their production starts going out and they start getting in money, they are not going to be giving us money or buying new machines. So the second aspect is looking at our customers' needs, supporting them with service. So service perhaps will help bring in some cash flows. Third, there are always, some stuck money. There are always inventory. So you'll have to look at where are those areas where cash flows or cash or inventory or work in progress is stuck. So it's all about reducing waste, finding means by which we are helpful to our customer, which would give us some revenue. And most important, taking our people along by transparently discussing with them that this is a question of all of us are in this together. If we need to emerge successful, it's not just me or you or the company or our customers. We have to kind of bring it together, and we all need to cut our coat according to our cloth. So some cases, senior management may have to make bigger cuts. Junior management may need to look at smaller cuts. So this is what I think as a machine tool manufacturing company are some of the things that we really need to do and do very transparently over the next 12, 16 months by the time we understand what is going to be the new normal.
Thank you, Mr. Ramesh.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
You're well. You're well. Now we have Mr. Prasad. Let's see if we can talk to him. Mr. Prasad, can you hear us?
I think he's muted.
I've just unmuted him.
So he needs to unmute.
He needs to unmute.
He needs to unmute. So I'll read out his question. Okay. How should organizations adopt their short-term strategy to tide over the current crisis? And there are other questions also, which are similar. So I'll read out one more question, which is similar. This is from Prem Sharma. Let's see if we have Mr. Prem Sharma. Mr. Sharma, Mr. Prem Sharma, can you hear us? Mr. Prem Sharma?
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Mr. Sharma,
Yeah,
good to have you here. Good morning, good morning. Which company do you represent?
Stellar value chain, supply value chain.
Great, great. Good to have the company supporting us today.
Yeah.
So what was your question?
Sir, my question is, we are with the service industries in transportations. So I want to know that what steps we have to take to come out with these critical situations after COVID.
Okay. So Mr. Ramesh addressed it for the manufacturing companies. And let's see if Dr. Sinha wants to focus this or focus on the service industry for this particular question. Dr. Sinha?
Yeah. So transportation is a dependent demand based on what are the demands for various products from the consumer side. So as and when the demand picks up and things becomes normal, the service industry will also pick up. I empathize with the transportation industry because they had a lot of disruption, especially during the early part of the lockdown, where the trucks were not allowed to move. The drivers had gone back to their villages. A lot of disruptions. But now, thanks to the lot of good work that is happening in the transportation industry, things are getting back to normal. One good thing is that the trucks are flying much faster on the highways, so there's hardly any traffic. And secondly, when it comes to distributing the products within the cities, earlier there used to be restrictions that the trucks can't enter the main city during peak hours. Nowadays, those restrictions are, in my opinion, not there in most of the cities. So it's much easier to distribute. The question really is how fast, how can the transportation companies double up and increase the distance that they travel per day. Most of them do about 300, 350 kilometers a day. So can they do 500 kilometers a day and reach from Delhi to say Chennai in a couple of days or 3 days? So all those things will be useful for the consumer goods industry. So the faster transit time, the better ability to distribute within the city is what is coming out as the two key things that we are looking forward to from the transport industry.
Mr. Sharma, does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Mainly we are with the industry shipments. We are doing the transportation of industries mainly. So we are not means. I just want to know the what situations will be after this COVID, because most of the industries is gone down. Means their
Yes.
supply will gone down, their production will gone down. So
Yes, I'll have to intervene there. Mr. Sharma, we'll answer that question. We'll take that as one separate question because many attendees have asked a similar question as to how much time this will take and what will it look like.
yeah.
So let's address it as one question. Yes, Mr.
Aanand,
Ramesh.
no, very, very quickly. I mean, again, presuming it's industry, again, this is just a guesstimate that people are talking about. The next 4 months, shipments of industrial equipment, I'm not talking about parts, I'm talking about industrial equipment, perhaps will be less than 40% of what it always was. This is a kind of an emerging idea. It's not a, I'm not, please don't hold me to it, is expected to be around just 40% of what it was. So perhaps for your planning, for your cash flows, etc., you should look at saying what that means and what are those internal actions that you will have to look at.
Mr. Sharma, does that address your query?
Yes.
Thank you so much for your patience.
Thank you, sir.
And thanks for empathizing with us. We are actually going through very, very tough times these days.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, Mr. Goel, do you want to quickly elaborate on how challenging these times are at your end?
See, yes, definitely the times at our end are tough, but within Stellar we have made out a task force, specially designed task force, and we've risen to the occasion. We are supporting the industry in a big way. We are moving a lot of essentials, all across the country. We are crisscrossing now, but we are encountering various challenges. Mr. Sinha rightly said, Dr. Sinha rightly said that. Roads are free, but what is happening is interpretation of government guidelines on those roads are varying from state to state, city to city. So even if a truck driver is flying with a permit, local authorities have no hesitations in stopping him and parking him for 6 hours, even if he is carrying essentials. So at times we overdo it, but these are some hazards which we are facing, and we are going ahead with it. Probably another week or so down the line, things will settle down a bit more. We hope, and things will be better on it. So
Thank you.
that is, yeah.
Thank you for sharing your perspective. You have to say anything to that, Dr. Sinha, Mr. Ramesh?
No, I think that.
No, nothing. I mean,
Okay.
that's how it is. But see, again, unfortunately, another thing that we have to understand and we have to realize, see, this is a medical pandemic, but when it comes from government enforcing, since we have laws or whatever, which is, so dated, whether we like it or not, we have to use terms like Section 144. We have to use terms like curfew. Now, we don't understand it, but the minute we say Section 144 and we say curfew, the definition of those words in the minds of police force is something very different than what the situation is today. They're all to do with, unrest, and now there is no unrest. So this is where the latis come out and they're saying nobody on the road, nobody on the road. So now these are again learnings that we are also learning at every level.
Yes, that's so true, so true. So I remember this Mr. Harari that I'm personally a fan of, the author and historian. He said something like that this is a fluid time in the history of mankind, where things are changing so fast and trends that were gradual in the past years have suddenly become mainstream or faded away in a matter of weeks. So these are unprecedented times.
Yep.
Gentlemen, we have to finish this at 10:45 as promised to the attendees. So we have about 7 more minutes. Do you want to take more questions? I have one question of my own. Do you want to take more audience questions?
We'll try to answer any question. I hope it helps.
Excellent, excellent. So I'll take the most common question that is being asked. Okay. You answered all. Okay, so which just a sec. I just saw one very interesting question. Yes, Mr. Rohit Anand. Let's see if Mr. Rohit Anand is online. Mr. Rohit Anand, can you hear us?
Yes.
How are you?
I'm fine and good morning to everyone.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Which company do you represent, sir?
So I belong to UPL India Limited.
Can you expand on that, please?
This is UPL is United Phosphorus Limited and it is into agrochemical.
Okay, okay.
And
How are you holding up?
I think since agrochemical being a part of the essential service, so the things are not that tough in our part. But only thing is that since the government has allowed to produce and do the manufacturing, but the struggle what we are being having in terms of the packing material, because the suppliers who which are very little suppliers and they are not able to cope up with this entire environment, and that is being typically disrupting our entire supply chain because of the packing material.
Wow. Okay. Greatly appreciating your experience and perspective. What was your question?
So my question was like, what would be the industry or sector which will be coming out very quickly after this COVID-19 and will flourish in a more better way as compared to at a present scenario? And contrary to that, what would be the the industry and sector which will continue to have this effect of COVID-19 with a very long term?
Brilliant question. Brilliant question. Mr. Ramesh, you want to take it up first?
Yeah, very briefly, Dr. Sinha perhaps can elaborate. I think, again, the industry that will immediately bounce back is, the B2C, the essentials, whether it's hygiene, whether it's personal hygiene. And those are the industries that will, from day next will kind of come back. And as far as the industry that's really going to take the most hit is perhaps travel, holiday, and the services. And it's because of that that many of the other industries are going to be kind of dragged back down. Travel industry, tourism industry, entertainment, physical entertainment industry. Yes, Netflix can go up, Amazon Prime can go up, etc. But the idea of, again, sports, an IPL match or an exhibition. Now, these are going to be issues that not only will the industry themselves don't want to do, but there will be very, very heavy curbs. Imagine all of us standing on circles in a railway station or in an airport with people sticking in thermometers into our mouth and checking our historical records. And if you have to try, and I'm not talking about out of the country, this could even become from state to state or from district to district also. So this perhaps is going to be, again, I'm just talking of a worst case kind of a scenario. This could last for quite some time to come. So this is what I'm making sense of right now.
And sir,
Thank
what is your take on e-commerce and IT infrastructure, basically, which is into manufacturing of laptops and networks?
So let's,
I believe
Rohit.
they should do
Yes,
well. I believe they should do well.
okay, okay. Dr. Sinha?
Yeah. So in terms of the industries, I think the FMCG and foods, the daily essentials would come back pretty fast. Then the cosmetics part would be the next one to come out. And then the consumer durables part, which includes automobiles, etc. And the services sector, some parts will come out pretty fast. For example, e-commerce is expected to pick up compared to its level of penetration today. So we already see more and more by these delivery companies. So that will pick up and stabilize at a much higher level, in my opinion. But other, as Mr. Ramesh said, the entertainment, traditional entertainment, the tourism, hotels, etc., would be the last ones to pick up. Yeah, so that's roughly the spread.
Okay, okay. I'll just ask one final question. Sorry, Mr. Ramesh, you were saying something?
No, no.
Okay. So one final question to wrap this up uh, to both you gentlemen. So you've seen all the steps that the government has taken, the fiscal stimulus, and obviously other containment measures. Mr. Ramachandra, you were saying something? Sorry, I couldn't. Anyway, so just to repeat it quickly, the question is that do you see any additional measures that the government can undertake to bring the economy back on track whenever it does? I'll start with you, Mr. Ramesh.
See, at this point in time, the most important is the government should get more clear in its, they are doing enough or they're going the right direction, but it's more about how they are communicating it is where one area that they could look at an immediate, see, because there are too many people saying too many things and this is leading to confusion. While many of those things are good, but it's being interpreted differently. So this is something that I will definitely get better. Second is, see, one is about announcing, second is about seeing it through. See, once these things are being put into operations, so more than saying, I would rather, expect communication being better, and then they think through what they are saying and they implement whatever it is that they're saying. See, if people know this is all we get, fine, but let it kind of, go through properly. This is what I would kind of say.
Yes, insightful. Dr. Sinha?
Yeah, I think the government is doing quite a bit. It's a challenging time for them as well. And their focus on health first before economy is the right thing, because people should be healthy, people shouldn't lose their lives, etc. So that focus is very important, and that's what the government is focusing. When it comes to reviving the economy, I think we are that stage is still some time away. So some stimulus packages have already been announced, and I'm sure more will be announced by the government. So it's going in the right direction, and I'm sure the industry has a lot to do along with what the government is doing. It's not only a job of the government, but for all of us together to come out of it in a proper manner. So these will be graded and these will be time-phased initiatives that the government will take based on how the situation improves in future. But I'm very happy with the way things are happening currently in terms of responding to this pandemic.
Thank you, thank you. Dr. Sinha, now this is time to wrap up. Any message you have for the viewers?
Just do whatever you think is the best, and many a times what our heart tells us is the right thing to do. So the traditional logic sometimes doesn't apply, especially in these these conditions, but our heart tells us that this is the right thing to do and we should go ahead and do that. So that would
Mr.
be
Kumar? Thank you, thank you. That's so encouraging. Mr. Kumar, any message to our viewers?
You're talking to me? Yeah.
Yes, yes. Any message to our, this is time to wrap up.
Yeah,
Anything you want to
see, my
convey
only,
to our, yes.
Dr. Sinha was right. Please go with your heart and with your feelings. See, we have had many difficult times before, And if we really look back on history at any point in time, whenever something happens that's difficult, we emerge better. So that's the spirit with which we really will have to go. Every cloud has a silver lining, and we look and reflect more deeper only when there is a troublesome atmosphere, because that's when we really bring out the best in us. So I personally believe, yes, it could be a little longer, it could be a little more expensive. There would be some sacrifices that people have to make, but I believe that, you know, things will get better and we'll come out stronger.
Wow. Wow. So go with your heart and we'll come out stronger. That is the takeaway for me personally. This was a brilliant, brilliant session, very encouraging. Thank you, gentlemen. Really brightened up the day and the future, I'm sure, of our attendees. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Now
Thank you
we'll,
very much.
thank you. Now we'll end our meeting, and you guys take care. Stay safe, stay home.
You too.
Yeah,
Take
all of
care.
us. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.